After making Groundhog Day, and making Groundhog Day into an action movie, and making Groundhog Day into a horror movie, and after making Groundhog Day into an X-Files episode, it's now a romantic comedy in Palm Springs. So, first off, this movie is streaming on Hulu currently, so if you have Hulu, which I know you do, then you can go watch this for yourself before I talk about it. In the real world, actions have consequences, but not for Andy Samberg's character. Niles is stuck in an infinite time loop. One day he tries to seduce Sarah, and when Niles is hunted and shot with a bow and arrow by the mysterious Roy, Niles seeks to enter a cave that starts a repeat of the day to end his pain. Unfortunately, Sarah accidentally follows him in and gets stuck in the time loop herself, and she is stuck repeating the day of her sister's wedding with her family who doesn't even like her. After Niles explains the rules of the universe to her, and she starts to get a bit upset, she eventually comes to terms with her new reality. After a while, Niles and Sarah start to fall for each other. One day we find out Sarah was sleeping with the groom on the wedding night, and she can't take the guilt anymore, and she tries to leave. Niles finally tells her that Roy is somebody he met during his time in Infinity, and they partied and got high, and he accidentally took him to the cave and he walked in. Unable to cope with his new reality, he hunts Niles for revenge every so often. She tells him to confront Roy, and he refuses to, so one day Roy shows up in a cop car, and she pulls a vehicle over, and just before getting killed with a shotgun blast, Sarah runs, pinches him into between two cars and another cop car, arrests the two heroes. They get into a topic of discussion, and Niles slips out that he's been having sex with her for a long time because he's in Infinity. Sarah runs off, and Niles realizes that now that Sarah is gone, he doesn't have anybody to love. He heads to Roy's place for advice. It turns out Roy was the farmer's insurance guy the whole time.
We are farmers, bum 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 bum.
After they reconcile and agree not to bother each other anymore, Sarah appears in Niles' bed one morning and reveals that she has studied quantum physics, and they're going to try and use the C4 while they're in the cave to explode themselves out the back of the time loop, and she's still upset at him. After a heartfelt speech by Niles, she takes him back and says, "I love you," and they jump through the wormhole, shooting them through time and space, and they end up right back where they started, and still in the loop. So one of my first thoughts for this movie was that it was a bit of a newer concept for a rom-com. It's not the same old stale, somebody walked up, sat down at a bar, said, "What's your sign?" and another dude walks up, saves the day, and a budding romance starts. It's still got its cliche and tropes like, oh well, there has to be a rough point in the relationship where she runs away and he has to go get her back, or there has to be a heartfelt speech at the end where he says, "I love you," and they come back and reconcile. But I think the real issue comes when, I don't know how many times you could rewatch this movie. It's fine the first time, and I actually enjoyed it a fair bit, but I think it fell into the meet the parents trap. Let me explain. On the rom-com rewatchability scale, there are two types of rewatchable movies. One that has a deep, engrossing plot with depthful characters that have you rooting for them the whole way. In other words, Jerry Maguire. Or a funny comedy that is rewatchable because of its timeless jokes. In other words, When Harry Met Sally. The Meet the Parents trap is when a movie kind of tries to do both and never really picks a lane to stay in. I liked Meet the Parents when I first saw it. I thought it was pretty good, but I can't watch it again because there's nothing to relive, like in Jerry Maguire, where I get reinvested into these characters, and there aren't that many good jokes to laugh at because the writing wasn't all there for that movie. Overall, I think Palm Springs lands about here on the spectrum. I could rewatch it maybe one more time, but no more than that. Max Barbacal's directorial debut was a fairly successful one. I mean, this was a great first movie. There isn't a lot of technical stuff to shoot on it, but it seems that there was some fairly good directed chemistry by Andy Samberg and Kristen Milioti. As of now, there is nothing but garbage after garbage after garbage coming out. Because of the global pandemic, there has been nothing but garbage after garbage after garbage coming out. So Andy Samberg has a real possibility of getting Best Lead Actor for this role, I think. He was genuinely pretty funny. Another good aspect of this movie is its score. It's got the real feeling of summer that you would expect for a movie set in Palm Springs. According to IMDb, this is also the biggest sale of a Sundance film. There were some intriguing parts where they briefly talk about how Niles has a bit of a nihilism issue. I don't know if the naming is coincidental or on purpose, but they don't touch on it much after he says that he's basically stuck in Infinity and has nothing to do for the rest of the time. Then Sarah successfully talks him out of it, kind of, but becomes a nihilist herself, and then Niles talks her out of it, and they live happily ever after. I think I would give this movie a 78 out of 100. Rewatchability is an underrated quality that all iconic movies have that makes them hold up and stand the test of time, and this almost has none of that, which brings down any film a fair bit. And that is where this video ends. Now click subscribe and go away. I don't want you here anymore.